I think we went through this huge explosion, and I was there to ride that wave of like the TV series on NBC and everything. And then when Tough Mudder at CBS, and then we now see kind of like a drop off and a decline. My biggest worry is just that new athletes aren't really getting into the sport, and that we seem to see a lot of people getting out of it and doing other things.
Welcome back to the All You've Got podcast. I am such a fangirl of our guest this week. I think you are a pretty big fan of our guest.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
This week we got to chat with the one and only Amelia Boone. And I think this is definitely my favorite conversation we've had so far. Again, I'm biased. She's the whole reason why I even got into OCR in the first place. But I really love this conversation because she's so open on her own social media with like everything that goes on in her life when she was doing her egg freezing, when she goes through injuries, you know, her whole journey. She's so real and raw about it. And we were able to kind of tap into all of that with this conversation as well.
Yeah, she puts it all out there, man. It's a good episode. Talk about the old golden days OCR and talk about if we're still in them or if they're past, and talk about dogs, which everyone likes dogs. So
everyone loves dogs. Yeah, no, it was great. You guys are going to love this one. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the All You've Got podcast. I'm Steph Garcia Psychos.
I'm Trevor Psychos.
And I am personally so excited for our guest today. I'm going to fangirl this entire time because this is truly how I got into OCR. And spoiler alert, this is how I got into Trevor Psychos, is by this guest. Couple stats before we bring her in. She was the winner of the women's winner for the 2012 WTM, and she was second overall. That's a big deal. 2014, 2015, she won again, 75 miles both those years. 2013, she was the Spartan world champ. And she is actually one of two people to have won WTM and Spartan world champs. The other one is a little guy named Ryan Atkins. You might have heard from him. Our amazing guest today. I am so excited to bring her in, Amelia Boone. Hey.
Hi. That's quite an intro. I always get like hot and flushed when people say that. I'm like, I'm really not that cool, I promise.
Oh, but you are. Let us say that you don't have to say it. We'll say it for you. Obviously, we both have known you in separate ways for a long time. But before we really get into you, I just have to be selfish and shout out how you played a role in this relationship. For those who don't know, Amelia, big time OCR stud, was racing WTM this past year, 2021. I'm a fan. I'm a friend. We both work with the amazing David Roche and Swap. So I was following along with Amelia, you know, on her Instagram as she was racing. And after the race, you know, everyone's hanging out or whatever. And there was just this creature on her Instagram stories. And I was like, oh my God, who is this person?
Big dog.
This big, long-haired Tarzan. So I asked Amelia, I was like, who is this man? Like, is he single? What is the story here? Honestly, you took a couple days to respond to me. And the whole time I'm like, he can't be single. Like, no chance. Like, this guy, come on. And you finally wrote back and you were like, oh yeah, he's super single, whatever, he's great, here he is. And I was just like, oh God, what do I do with this information? I was brave.
I was like, you should slide into his DMs. Oh.
That's the first time I ever heard that term in my life. Like, what is that?
Well, if you know Trevor Psychos, you understand how he doesn't look at messages. So I'm shocked that he actually responded like same day. It was fate, but yeah, Amelia, you are the reason that I am now married to Trevor Psychos. So thank you, or maybe I'll be mad at you one day. I don't know.
So far, so good.
So far, so good. I know. I was funny because I remember stuff reaching out to me, and thankfully, it was like, I think it was the picture, Trevor, where I made everybody hold the check, or somebody was making everybody hold my check. And Steph was like, who is that gorgeous man with long hair? And there was rest was history.
Yeah. I mean, so for anyone who has questions, like you can direct them to Amelia because
I'm just a matchmaker.
You are a matchmaker. But anyway, so happy to have you here. Let's dive in. I have a big question for both of you because you guys have been in the sport of OCR 10 times longer than me. As I kind of referenced, like I fangirled Amelia back in like 2016. She was the whole reason I was like, ooh, OCR, this is cool. But my question for both of you guys is, have we passed the golden age of OCR? Like, is it becoming too commercial? Is it, are the really strong athletes like getting out of the sport? Like, what is it like right now?
Amelia,
okay. It's interesting. I feel like first of all, I'm not as involved in the sport as I used to be. So I don't really have my finger on the pulse of Spartan, especially. I think we went through this huge explosion, and I was there to ride that wave of like the TV series on NBC and everything. And then when Tough Mudder at CBS, and then we now see kind of like a drop off and a decline. My biggest worry is just that new athletes aren't really getting into the sport, and that we seem to see a lot of people getting out of it and doing other things. I know Ryan and Lindsay announced this year they're going to kind of like branch off. And so it's kind of like, okay, well, where's the next generation and where is that coming from? So I don't know. And I think it's tough too now that it's consolidating and it's really just Tough Mudder and Spartan and Savage Race a little bit. But I mean, Spartan owns Tough Mudder. So I don't think it will go anywhere, but I don't know it's growing anymore.
Yes, I think like a golden age is kind of like when you have all those unknowns. Like we had Battle Frog, all these Warrior Dash, all these races popping up everywhere, and all these athletes coming out trying it, and so no one really knew anything, right? So that's kind of just that phase, 2011 to like 2016, I think is kind of when it ended. But and then like all of the big names are gone, like Hobie Call, Cody Moat, Hunter McIntyre doesn't really race OCR anymore. So I mean, back then those guys were racing every weekend, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, I used to race. I think I raced probably twice a month, like every other week I was on a plane racing somewhere just year round. And you don't really see that anymore. But I don't think it's going anywhere. I do just worry about the pipeline where people are going to come from, because it is rare to see runners get into OCR because normally it's like this overcoming an ego thing, and I know Steph, you can definitely relate to that. But yeah.
Well, what's interesting, a couple things in my head is just, I'm thinking back to after the St. Louis Obispo Spartan, and there was that big debate that kind of came out of like, are the obstacles challenging? Is this a runner's race? Like what is going on there? And some people had really strong opinions either way. As Spartan tries to get more standardized, maybe it's dumbing it down. And so as someone who is not obstacle proficient, I'm great with penalty loops, but I also respect that the sport is different. It's not a cross-country race with a couple of like things you hang from. It's OCR. So I don't really know I'm too new to the sport to like have a real opinion, but when I think about it, I think back to, again, your early days, Amelia, when I first interviewed you, and it seeming a different vibe for sure.
Absolutely. So we'll see. I mean, I hope it sticks around, because I don't want to be in like 20 years, people be like, you did what? What was that sport you did?
I'll be curious if they ever get it to the Olympics. It will be interesting. I mean, we have breakdancing now, so I mean, why not OCR?
Ooh. I feel like if we do, it will be something along the lines of like a very, very like short course, kind of what they're doing with like that almost like Deka fit, like a cross between CrossFit and OCR. Like there's nothing, no one's going to sit and watch like a 24-hour obstacle race on TV. Though I don't know, I find World's Toughest Mudder extremely fascinating. So
yeah, it'd be like a stadium or probably a Deka, like you're talking about. Deka is standardized. It's the same course every time, right?
Right, exactly.
Have you done a Deka or a Hyrox or anything?
I have not. It's not exactly my jam.
You have one of those ergs though, so you could.
I do.
I'm kind of
back
jealous.
in the day, I was way more into CrossFit. So like I did like 2012, 2013. I actually competed at regionals in 2014 in CrossFit, but like, I just don't, it got really heavy really fast. You had to be able to lift like deadlift like 400 pounds. I was like, nope, not me.
I just pulled it for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's like, can't clean a jerk 275. Sorry, go home, boy.
Exactly.
Well, let's move on in your story. So back in these days, you were in Chicago and then you were in the Bay Area and now you're in Colorado. And you've been like super open on social media about this journey for you, and how it maybe wasn't exactly what you first thought it would be when you made that move. In comes your amazing little doggy, Emmy. Not little, she's massive.
She's very big. Yes.
Yeah,
Not as big as Trevor's dog, but yes.
Yeah.
Yogi the bear.
Oh, yeah.
He's
We can.
outside hunting right
If
now.
you ever
Oh, nice.
want another dog to love on, we can
Right.
certainly ship Yogi to you forever.
No.
But then you got into fostering, and I can't remember if that was pandemic related or before that. But tell us about that. What drove you to kind of open your home in that way?
Yeah. So I moved to Colorado. It was the pandemic. I was alone. And I think there was just this part of me, like I'd moved into no house and I was almost like in my head all the time. And I needed something, I figured like something else to take care of. And so I really like got into dogs because I was like, oh, like this is helpful for me to get out of my own head. And it like gave me a purpose. There wasn't racing, there wasn't anything like that. I wasn't traveling, but it was a way for me to kind of like love and to nurture. And it's been an adventure. My house is totally destroyed at all times. Fences have been jumped and torn down. Blinds have been torn down. Everything has been eaten. My couch was eaten. But I don't know. It's something different because I think especially too as an athlete, like when you think you have just like running or you have your sport, but oftentimes, as I've known through injury, like sport can go away, sport can be taken from you. And so it's kind of like having a different purpose was super important for me.
Did you feel like the pandemic in general kind of like for you and the time of your life that you were in kind of just was a natural shift for you to kind of make some different choices when it comes to lifestyle and race priorities, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I think it was like, and it gave me a time to kind of adult in a weird way and to try and think. I think it's so easy when we're just like jumping from race to race and to thinking like, okay, what's next, to actually like not be like, okay, I'm like 38 now. I'm in my late 30s. Like, where is life taking me? What am I doing with it? And try and, do things like I bought a house. Like I like just figuring out what it, other things beyond just focusing on the here and now. Cause I did that for so many years since 2011. And it's just like race and race and race and race and injure yourself and try and get out of injury and get back to racing, things like that.
Yeah. I almost feel like that same thing happened to you, Trevor. He was still being a government contractor on the road for 6+ months out of the year and then going on adventures. And then I think the pandemic, I mean, you can say this better than me, but it kind of grounded you in a way and forced you to like actually focus on your business and what was like the next.
Yeah, I put all my energy in my business and grew it. With the yearly revenue income just one year, and I only ran like 700 miles that year, like total. I squeezed in 2 miles here, 2 miles there, and never did any runs. So I was just totally focused on, just one other thing. So
yeah, as a track athlete, we just think in such like the 4-year cycles, and having that Olympic delay just totally threw everything off. And I know there are a lot of women in the sport who like were planning on having a baby or something like that during the down year and coming back. And it's just really, I feel like it's put everything on its head in a little ways. Some people took it and like as a challenge and came back a million times stronger and ready to drop some nasty PRs, but others kind of used it as a way to say like, oh, maybe there's other things in life and that's okay. I feel like that's where I landed with it.
Really good mental reset.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think so. I think like getting out of that cycle, and then also like it gave me time to like explore other things and just explore like get into biking and cycling and mountain biking and like things that I wouldn't necessarily do because I was so focused on like must train for this next race, you know? So I don't know. I think in hindsight, it was maybe a blessing for a lot of athletes as well, especially.
Are you ever random question, are you ever gonna do the Elliptigo like championship thing that they do?
Yeah, so I was actually supposed to do it these past 2 years. 2020, it was the week after Big's Backyard Ultra. So I was just like, I was supposed to go, and then I was like, I can barely walk. So I bailed on that. And then last year I was actually exposed to COVID like 2 days before I was supposed to fly out. And so decided to not go. But one day, just ride an elliptigo up a mountain in San Diego. It'd be fun.
I mean, I feel like the record is like pretty fast.
Oh yeah. It's really stout. And I'm just like, that's pretty impressive. I don't think I can ride my elliptigo that fast, but
I would just have to shout you out because you're brave enough to go on that thing out in the public world. Trainer, and I do not leave my like living room. That's it. Like it is. I also think it's so dorky when you're
it's so dorky. That's the problem, is that like everyone just looks at me. I've had water bottles thrown at my head. I've had really people like be like, get a real bike. Like people are mean just because it looks different.
We're in Seattle. People were like, yeah.
I know. People are like, oh, I've got my unicycle. Can I unicycle alongside you? That's why I'm always like, I know, because like Ryan Atkins, doesn't he have a background as like a champion unicycler? Mm-hmm. I'm all like, I can take my Elliptigo out and he can take his unicycle and everyone can make fun of us.
That is a great next level for OCR racing or something.
I know. Just take a unicycle through the course.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so another big thing that you kind of got into post-pandemic, you know, during the pandemic was you made the decision, and again, you were super public with this, and kudos to you. You decided to freeze and store your eggs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why? And like, what was that physical and emotional journey like for you?
You know, it's interesting because it's been on my radar for a few years. I've had a few different breakdowns. I think when I hit the age of 35, I was like, whoa, what am I doing with my life? And then like early 2021, I found myself single again. And like at this point I was 37 and I was like, I don't know if I want kids. I'm still at this point. I always thought at some age I would know for sure that I wanted children. And I'm still like, I don't really know. And then I'm like, oh, your window's closing. Like if you don't know, and I'm super fortunate that I recognize that Apple has benefits. So like, you know, they covered a lot of the costs for me because it's expensive. You know, I think a cycle of egg freezing is about $15,000 or so. So I decided this year after World's Toughest Mudder that I was like, gonna do it. Finally gonna do it. And I did. And it was honestly, like everyone just tells you that it's like 2 weeks of injecting yourself full of hormones and you can't run for 2 weeks. And it was right after World's Toughest Mudder. So I didn't care, you know, I wasn't running anyway. But it was wild. Like you pump yourself through like with a lot of hormones and, like your body reacts in weird ways. And that was especially hard for me coming from like being in recovery for an eating disorder, just to be like, what is happening to my body? And then also, if I can't handle this, can I handle being pregnant for 9 months? I was like, this was 2 weeks. So I think I had never heard a lot of athletes talk about it. I had heard stories of people doing it, but no like high level athlete and how it affected them. So for me, I was like, well, I couldn't find any resources on it. So let me be a resource and kind of share how the process was for me. And clearly it's different for everyone, but yeah.
Well, from the elite female athlete perspective, like I'll tell you, I like have totally Googled it in the past, you know, when I was really in the thick of racing and at my peak, it was like, okay. I mean, at the time I was like early 30s or late 20s and was like, okay, well, what's the plan? Because the message we get as women growing up is like, yeah, 35, you're too old. Like you're done, you're geriatric or whatever. So if you're in your late 20s, early 30s, and you're at a high level competing, you can't just, I'm saying this with love, sacrifice your body to a child for 9 months plus, because, you know, who knows what the postpartum recovery is like. And so that's a risk that, or that's a decision that everyone has to make. And so, yeah, I remember looking like, again, I did like one Google search one time and saw it was 20 grand. And I was like, okay, well, close that window, you know? So,
Right.
so gosh, you mentioned, I think on stories at one point that even after that 2-week period and the retrieval process, you still kind of had some like lingering, you know, I don't even know exactly what it was, but bloat, or you still felt like your body wasn't quite regulated again with hormones. How was that with your getting back into training? And then also, again, you've been so vocal, so I'm not feel bad asking, but your, you know, your ongoing journey with your eating disorder recovery.
Yeah, it's been really hard to be honest. My hormones are still regulating. It's almost May, and I'd had the retrieval beginning of December. But like I had a period for like 2 weeks straight. Like it just like, I just like things are off because you pump yourself full. My estrogen levels were like, Trevor's eyes are glazing over right now. My estrogen levels were like at like 8,000 during this at the time of retrieval, which is bonkers. And it was hard for me. And like, I started like, and it still is kind of, you know, I actually ended up with a hip injury, like a hip pelvic issue after this. And I was like, is it related? Did I totally just screw myself over by doing this? Did I get back into running too soon? Did I not give myself enough time off? So, but like nobody told me these things. They just were like, oh yeah. You know, like you'll be like pretty bloated for like 7 days after the retrieval, but then you'll be fine. And maybe as athletes, we're so hyper aware and in tune with our bodies that it just like, I felt like it took me longer, you know, or maybe it was all in my head. I don't know. So, but I don't have any regrets. I'm glad I did it. It actually, in a weird way, and this sounds horrible, made me kind of realize I actually don't think I want children, which is strange that I went through this entire process for it. But I think I needed to, because the question would be there always in my mind.
That makes so much sense to me. Again, from the female athlete perspective, like you're the kind of athlete, you're like an adventure athlete. Like you go and you do the unknown. And like, that's part of like what you love about it. It seems like on the outside, at least. And so for you to kind of have these questions and like, I'd have the opportunity to like, let's acknowledge that like you have the opportunity to do this financially, but just to have, you know, that experience without having to go through a proper like pregnancy or dealing with that part of it. Like, gosh, what an adventure.
Yeah, it was very much an adventure.
I think women are tough and it's hard. I mean, you're both super proactive, you know, like you can't sit still. Like Stephanie, you can't sit still. So
yeah,
it's just like, and you got to make a sacrifice, right? And it's just
can you like
decision to make. So
can you imagine your body being like,
should have been a dude, man? Right.
I know, right? It was like after the retrieval, I was like, God, I look like 5 months pregnant. I was like, I guess this is like practice for what it would be like, you know. But you know, and I think a number of athletes have reached out to me about it. I was like, dude, if you're fortunate to have like coverage for it, I think it's a great option, you know. But it's also not foolproof, you know. Like, so a lot of people go through all that process and then are actually never able to get pregnant from those eggs. So you're like, it's tough.
Yeah,
I mean, there's been girls from the church who get pregnant in their 40s. So
yeah, it is true. I know.
All right. Okay. Well, moving on. Kind of going into, you just announced this the other day, early this week, that you have a couple pieces with Ultimate Direction coming out. And first of all, I think they're badass. They're super cool. And now that I'm not a sponsored athlete, I am excited to try it, especially the vest. I know you've said like you go sleeveless with the vest. That is my style.
Nice.
I'm a big fan of their vest. I think they're up there.
Yeah.
Direction.
Yeah. So like those pieces. So tell us the story of how you got that like project going, but also you've gotten some feedback about it, and you're just kind of like the person for body image feedback. So how did this come about, and how are you dealing with the aftermath?
Yeah, you know, so Ultimate Direction reached out to me, I think early 2020. I had been running for them for a few years, just with like packs and vests and stuff, that they wanted to start doing athlete focused collections. So they had like me and a few other athletes that was like design 3 pieces of things that you love. And I adore split shorts, like full split shorts, like the tiniest shorts that you can find. And but I haven't been able to find, like, people are like, oh, this is a split short, but it's like not a full one. It's like a half split. It's like still feels super constrictive. So I took this as my opportunity to be like, these are the shorts I want. This is what I love running in. So we, over the past 2 years, we've like worked with that. And it's funny because, you know, it was released last week, and in the back of my mind, I was a little bit worried because like my entire thing is like freedom of range of motion when you move, you know, so there's no sleeves, they're 1-inch split shorts. And because I am such an outspoken advocate of like, you know, health at every size and all bodies are good bodies and people, and like being inclusive of people in larger bodies, I did receive some feedback, you know, that like this is discriminatory to people in larger bodies because they would never wear these. And, you know, and I take that pretty hard because this is something that I'm like, I understand, you know, and also who says people in larger bodies can't wear small shorts? Are they not supposed to wear swimsuits? Are they not, like, it was this weird, almost like they've got internalized. Yeah, right.
You say it's wrong, you accept that.
I know.
Public, it seems
Yeah.
like sometimes that's the
Can't please everyone, trying to please everyone, and disappointed all the time. So
Yeah, I know. And I got myself in that place where I was like, oh shit, I do have to please everyone. And that's like a huge issue of mine. Instead of just being like, these are the 3 pieces that I really love. If you don't like them, Ultimate Direction has different pieces that you can wear, you know? But it hits me hard when people are like, you know, you say you're an advocate for all bodies, but you're making a piece that clearly nobody in a larger size would wear. And I'm like, well, how do you know? You know,
that would be
that's
my
the hard part.
response.
Yeah.
Hear from those people and see and if you're getting the feedback from everyone that no, we would never wear this. Okay, lesson learned, and move on to the next collection. But
Jack Black would, well, not just thing. So.
Well, and I actually did. I had a number of people reach out that were like, look, I'm a size like extra large. I would absolutely rock those, you know? So like, don't let like one person, and it's funny because I'm like, well, I don't like wearing pants. And I'm like, I would never, if somebody put like out a leggings collection, I would never be like, you're discriminating against me because I don't like to wear pants, you know?
Yeah.
But it's hard because I clearly like to be like, listen to people and take feedback. And I'm just super sensitive. And I know that it's really hard for me to just be like, oh, I don't care what you say, blah, 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 you know?
Yeah,
I'm trying to be better.
Amelia and Trevor is on the total opposite.
So I need to be a little more like Trevor.
Everyone needs a butthead to run their social media sometimes.
Yeah, there you go.
Exactly.
At least respond to the hate.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's like it's not worthy of a response, and sometimes it's a lesson to teach. So, I mean, do you think that you would have this? Again, you're saying your personality is like you want people to, you know, be happy. You want a people pleaser. I mean, that's what I am. Yeah. But do you think you would be this like concerned about it if you hadn't been so vocal or you weren't on an eating disorder recovery track?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Because I think back to like when I first started talking about my love for tiny split shorts, and it was before I was open about everything. And I don't think anybody ever questioned it. And I think that if people didn't associate with me with eating disorder recovery, didn't associate me with like, you know, I actually hate the term body positivity, but like body acceptance, then I don't think I would have gotten this feedback. It would have been like, oh, just like another, you know, like elite runner wearing skimpy clothes type of thing, you know? Yes. But it's just weird because I'm like, I don't wear split shorts to show off my legs. I just wear split shorts because they're functional and they, you know, it's like Trevor running only in tiny Ranger shorts all this during World's Toughest Mudder this past year.
Yeah, wear tights. I feel like they're just, I don't know. I can't wear tights.
It's so funny for me. Like I had so long of my career in those little freaking swimsuit bottoms.
Yeah.
Wear, but in real life, like I do not like wearing shorts, like especially like jean shorts and stuff. Like I don't like how my legs look in them, and I'm sure that's a privileged thing to say too. But like I would choose tights or pants over anything. And I get the restricted movement. Like I can't do a workout if I'm like really trying to do something, but just for aesthetics purposes, like I don't like having my legs out. Weird.
Right. And I don't like having my stomach out, you know? So it's like some people like, in OCR, it's everybody races in sports bras. And like I used to, but that was like a huge, huge insecurity for me all the time that I was racing, like back like 2012 through like 2016, is I was just like, why do we all have to be in sports bras? Like no one else is wearing a shirt. Like
I will say that like even as a track athlete, like again, we're in the little skimpy things.
Yeah.
I lived in college where you wore like the fitted singlet. It wasn't loose, so that but it went down to your stomach to like your waistband. And in OCR, in my mind, I'm like, I don't want my torso to be cut up in the freaking crazy Spartan trails that's just bushwhacking or like going over a wall. And like, I'd rather have some protection on my torso to like do that. I don't know. So
no, I made the worst mistake ever, which was it was like 2015 in Palmerton, and there was a Tyrolean traverse, and I think I was really tired at the point, so I was like, I'm gonna go on top of it because it's like much easier on your arm. So, and I just pull myself across really easily, and I was wearing just a sports bra, and I think I was so tired at the time I didn't care, but like I had this massive line of rope burn. And it was the most painful. It got infected then. And I had to like wear these huge bandages on my stomach. I still have a scar to this day. And I was like, nope, never again. Never again. Not going on top of the Tyro. No. At least if I'm not wearing a shirt.
I'm team singlet versus team sports bra when it comes to OCR.
Yeah.
Oh, can't do it. Well, you mentioned this, a little bit. Again, you're super, super vocal and transparent, which is such a blessing in this sport because most athletes, let alone female athletes, are not. It's all about like best day ever on Instagram. You've been super vocal about like your injury cycles and dealing with an injury or the question, am I getting injured? What do I do now? So many of us have that question of like, oh, is this a little like just strain? Is this a real thing? Can I take one day off or do I need to take 2 weeks off? Like, how did you evolve in your thinking with dealing with injury, overcoming it?
Yeah. It's for me, I feel like it's a constant like progress or work in progress, because I think I was so conditioned that every ache and pain was a stress fracture, because for many years it was, I ended up with like 6 stress fractures over 3 years. And then I went into eating disorder treatment and like was feeding myself appropriately and like getting to a healthier weight. And then I got another stress fracture and I was like, what the, like, it's not supposed to be happening. And so it's been like hard because I still am in this part where I just don't know if I trust my body all the time. Like I feel like I'm doing the right things, but I also realize like I had 20 years of kind of starving myself and I don't really know if the body is like can just forget that easily. And so I tend to be like overly cautious. It's funny because I think at this point, like David, our coach, is like always to me, if I feel something come out, he's like, you're fine, you're strong, it's totally fine. And I'm always like, I'd rather take 2 days off as opposed to 2 weeks off, as opposed to 2 months off. And I think that's just been kind of my like, would rather be overly cautious and in opposed to like being like, it's just something that will go away, And it's like, you just have to learn over time, like what's a bad ache or hurt and what's like a okay one. I'm still trying to figure it out.
I mean, but that's the opposite of what most endurance athletes mindset is. It's usually like, okay, push through a little bit longer and like take the risk versus like, listen, I mean, we're so in tune with our bodies, except when it comes to injury.
She's been running with me a lot, and I'm more of the approach, like if you can't talk a full conversation while you're running, you're going too fast. And also, I'm not afraid to take a walking break when I feel a little.
Yes.
I'm like, all right, I'm going to walk for a while. Like,
I actually feel like that's like an underutilized way to stay healthy. Like I think Strava is very, very hard because people run to their easy runs way too fast. I have done that myself for many, many years, because also you're like, oh God, can't interfere with my Strava stats, And so I think that like, yeah, just like toning the intensity, especially for the stuff that we do, you know, like Trevor, aren't you going to Scotland soon to like run for days and days or something?
Yeah,
like
but I think the easiest way to fix this is to train for time rather than mileage. Mile run, you're not going to run it slow. You want to get it over with or something like that. But if you know you're going to run for an hour, you're not going to run fast.
Yeah,
so
totally.
Train time. I don't care about mileage. If I get 5 miles an hour or 8 miles an hour, it doesn't matter if it's an hour.
It's so funny because like I've been running with my boyfriend and he doesn't own a watch, doesn't even know, like doesn't know any type of mileage when he runs. And I'm like, oh, God, I should like really adopt that because it's been really good for me just to be like, he's like, well, I don't know. I just have my routes. And I was like, do you even know how long you're out for? He's like, no. I'm like, my God. Like, okay. It's like totally the opposite of what I'm used to.
I mean, I'm also going through that mental transition of, I mean, it kind of started when I started working with David a year ago or so, but I mean, trail running is a different beast. And I remember my first couple of trail runs, just training runs, and seeing like 12-minute pace because I have an old Garmin that's like probably not even the satellites probably don't even work if you're under one tree. So it's just like always off. And I remember like just panic attacking in the middle of a run, like I'm hauling and I'm trying to go so fast. This is definitely like at least 7:30 pace. And why are you saying 12-minute pace? And David having to say to me, hey, like you want to go far in the sport, you have to change that mindset because like you won't make it. Like if you think you have to be,
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had to like, the great thing about trail running is you just like throw pace out the window, you know? So
it's like a 12-minute mile on trails in Washington is like an 8-minute mile on the road, you know? So it's,
oh yeah. And it's like, and I think I went through, I think Trevor heard me having this come to Jesus moment during World's Toughest this past year. Cause we were on like sand, in Laughlin. It was like way more sandier than I was expecting, Las Vegas style and like super fast. And instead you're like trudging through sand. And I was like, God damn it. I was like, I cannot hit 100 miles on this. And then there's like Mark Batres just like do. And I'm like,
it's my slowest sprint lap in my entire life.
I know.
During it. So I was like, you know what? Screw it. I was walking the first lap. I didn't care. It's like, you know what? It's a long race. I'll get there.
I know. So. And I was like, how is he running so fast through sand? Because I can't.
Mark's just an animal.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. But yeah, lots of ego thrown out the window and all of that, especially with trails.
maybe that's part of the issue with the pipeline into OCR and trails is that as from only one person's experience, which is mine, I was the kind of track athlete, and you talk about Strava and people putting their stats out and their recovery runs. If I ran a run, even a recovery run, slower than like 7:15 pace, I was freaking out. Like I'm out of shape. I suck. I'm not going to hit my goals. Now a 7:15 pace run is like, oh, this is the fastest run I've done all year. You know, like I'm flying here. Like it's so different. And maybe that mindset and that inability to like relax is something that is a struggle for other, you know, track athletes coming into trail or OCR.
Yeah. It's funny. I think especially with like OCR, I think it's funny to me that we wear like our smartwatches. Like I have my Suunto out there and I like can see where the uphill barbed wire crawl was. And like my pace was like 50 minutes a mile. And I'm like, why am I even recording this? What is it doing for me right now?
I don't wear my watch during races anymore. It's just like, that gets in the way. It gets snagged on stuff. It's like, just out the window, forget, just race.
I know. Though I wore it for World's Toughest this past year. And I think being in and out of the water really messed up the barometer. And it gave me like 100,000 feet of vert. And I was like, oh, I like this.
That's common.
Maybe it was like the climb up the A-frame and back down.
I think you guys are both laser beams. You know, that's what's made you so successful in your sports. You need to just find out how to turn it off for training, for racing, you know, like how to control it. It's just really a good question.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for the advice.
I call her Rocket.
Rocket.
I'm like, no, you're going too fast. I'm going to run by myself.
There you go. Watch
Okay.
out, Steph. Are you gonna like end up doing 100-mile races now?
I would love to just get into some ultra stuff for sure. Yeah, I'm going through a couple things right now, so my race schedule is a little bit up in the air for this year. But long term, yeah, especially when I go with him to Scotland and crew him for this 200-mile race, I'll either get super hooked or I'll be like, no thanks, So we'll see.
That's true. It's very. I always got the bug when I would crew. I'd be like, yeah, I want to do that, but then other people are like, I don't know, no, this is awful.
Well, as we start wrapping up here, I want to tap into your next race schedule. You just announced on Strava last night that you and your new boyfriend Ryan are going to be doing TransRockies. Tell us a little bit about that, and do you think the relationship's going to last?
I think we'll survive. We'll be fine. It'll be a bigger test when he's mainly a bike packer, so it'll be a bigger test when we do a lot of bike packing together, because that's like, a week or two on a bike, sleeping in a tent. But yeah, so TransRockies, which I just view as kind of like a fun thing, it's a stage race. I've never done a stage race before. I'm not sure. I'm going to see if I can get to a start line of a 100-miler in June right now, but I have a pretty tight timeline to like get in training. So that's kind of TBD. What else am I doing? I'm doing a lot of pacing and crewing this summer. I'll be at Western States. I'll be at Leadville. I'll be at World's Toughest in Alabama, Florida.
Yeah.
Where is it this year? technically in Alabama. I'm really not looking forward to that course. Okay. I'm glad I'm not the only one. It's going to be that like orange clay, mud and flat.
And air so thick you can't breathe.
I can't. Oh gosh, I'm so excited. I wish I could do it. I love it.
Please do it, because I'm all like, oh, maybe I want to sit this one out. But then whenever I sit one out, I'm always like, I wish I was out there. So
I'll be there to support you, Amelia.
Thank you. So yeah, so we'll see. I haven't really fleshed anything out. Like in terms of like other things. I'll do shorter races but hoping to get at least a 100-miler in this year, and then just adventuring during the summer. Probably do a fair amount of bike packing too. So cross training.
Follow that journey.
Thank you.
I mean, again, I'm saying with you, like when you said what that was, I'm like, oh, okay. I wonder how fun that would be.
Right. Exactly.
It would be awesome. So
right. Yeah.
Well, last question for you, Amelia. It's something Trevor and I debate about a lot.
Yeah.
When a woman hit 100 at WTM, and is it going to be you?
Okay. So this is I've always told people that this is like my white whale. I don't know if honestly, frankly, like Rhea has a much better shot if she ever came back to do World's Toughest Mudder. Maybe I shouldn't dismiss myself. I feel like if we went back to like New Jersey and like the flat, fast, like solid ground there was a lot of mud, even a Vegas style course, without like the cliff and whatnot. But it really depends on the terrain, the stuff with like the soul sucking mud and whatnot. But I think we'll see it, Katie hit 90 this past year. But it's just going to take a combination of like a lot of things. So I hope so. And I would love to be that person. I think I'm going to keep, I'm like, I'm going to be 39 at this World's Toughest. But hey, we see women into their 40s now crushing it. So I'm not going to write myself off just yet.
I think the biggest thing is self-sufficiency on obstacles.
Yeah.
You not rely on anyone. You have to be able to do everything yourself. And that, because like that's the thing with girls, like they'll look into a wall sometimes and wait for someone to come and help, and you just lost 2 minutes,
Yeah. And I know for me, I've always struggled with Everest, luckily, like the Everest Angels, but I've always struggled with Everest because I have no sprinting ability. So people are like, but you're tall. And I'm like, I can't get enough leg speed to get up there on my own, but it is true. Like the obstacle proficiency is going to be the key, and, not doing things like hoppy ball penalties because I can't hit a stupid bell. So I'm
excited for my own personal OCR journey, but there's so am so far back when it comes to obstacles themselves. So yeah, I have a long way to go. So I certainly won't be in the mix for any of that, but I am excited to follow along with you because I think you can be the one to do it for sure. We're super excited. Amelia, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing so much with us. Gosh, it's feels like when you meet your hero, live up to the hype, Amelia. So thanks so much. We loved having you.
Thank you.